Hello listeners, and welcome to the Montel Weekly Podcast, bring you energy matters in an informal setting. My name's Richard Sverrisson, and today we're in the beautiful and sunny city of Helsinki. And it's my great pleasure to have with me Anni Mikkonen from the Wind Power Association. Welcome, Anni.
Thank you.
And Jenni Patronen from Pöyry. I probably pronounced that wrongly, but welcome to you as well, Jenni.
Thank you.
I think we can kick off to talk about wind, Anni. I was looking at some figures yesterday and very little new additions last year in Finland. What's the reason behind that?
Well, there was actually no added capacity coming online last year because there was a change in the support mechanisms earlier. In 2015 actually was the change made. The last projects that were able to access to the feed-in tariff came online in 2017.
Okay.
And in 2017 the electricity market price in Finland was still rather low, and the production costs of wind power were so high that you could not really invest in wind without governmental subsidy.
Okay.
But now the situation is totally changed because the electricity market price has gone up and the production costs have been coming down. And now we have something like 520 megawatts under construction without governmental subsidy.
Okay, this is this year, so far this year?
This year they are under construction. Some of them are coming online next year, most of them coming online this year.
Okay.
But there's like 25% increase in the capacity without subsidy now.
This is, and we're talking onshore wind mostly.
Onshore wind.
So this could boost Finnish wind power capacity by what's currently about 1.7 gigawatts, is it, installed wind capacity in Finland?
A little bit over 2,000.
Okay, 2,000 megawatts.
Yes.
So this is 25%, as you say,
Yes.
addition. So that's quite substantial. Jenni, do you agree with this view that this is basically because of the move from a subsidy to a tender system that caused maybe last year the slowdown in wind power growth, but this year, with, as Anni said, with the market price increasing and the production cost or the marginal cost of wind power coming down, this has boosted wind in Finland?
Yes, I think that the situation has changed, as Anni just described, so kind of radical change in the situations. Before this, I think there was also kind of a bit of waiting with what happens with this new scheme for the support scheme for the wind, and that kind of many projects were waiting if they get accepted to the new system. But at the same time, there were a lot of projects looking for PPA off-takers and kind of being built or the investment decisions being made on the merchant basis.
Okay, we'll come back to PPAs, I think, because that's quite an interesting sort of financing model for wind power. But why is Finland attractive for wind power developers, would you say, Jenni?
Well, I think the Nordics in general are very attractive, and Finland is kind of part of that. Sweden and Norway have better sites, but Finland as well has a very good wind sites, and it's not as developed yet as a market as Sweden. So there's a lot of opportunities here in Finland to invest in wind.
Would you agree with that, Anni?
Yes.
So why is Finland then attractive for investors, would you say, compared to its neighbouring markets?
I agree with everything that Jenni said, but I would like to add that we have very little height restrictions in Finland, meaning that you can use the state-of-the-art technology, so highest possible turbines to access to more or stronger winds. And as Jenni said, we have fairly little of capacity so far, meaning that there's a lot of space in Finland. Like the land area is about the same size as Germany, and there's only 5.5 million of Finns around. In Germany there's like 82 million of Germans. So there's plenty of space. We have good grid and good locations, as Jenni said.
Yeah, and what are the wind conditions like here?
For the newest technology, fairly good. That you can see quite remarkable capacity factors in the newest wind farms in Finland.
So you're saying you can have the very high turbines, but you can also have the up to 5 megawatts per turbine. Is it? Is that's what could be built?
Yeah, at the moment, most of the turbines under construction are between 4 and 5 megawatts. But the capacity of the turbines is not limited by the authorities. So you can use that technology that suits to the area best.
Okay. And you mentioned the production cost or the marginal cost. Could you give us a few more details there, Anni?
Well, it's difficult for me to talk about prices because I am representing an association that is lobbying for wind power. But of course, I can repeat what is said in the newspapers already in Finland. So you have seen last autumn several interviews in the newspapers where the producers have said that you can sign a PPA with less than 35 euros per megawatt hour with the best wind power sites in Finland.
So that makes it very competitive. Absolutely.
Yes, it does.
We've seen countries and other areas where there's been a lot of vocal opposition to wind. Certainly now there's a big movement in Norway to try and halt, onshore wind in the western parts near Trondheim. Is this an issue in Finland, Jenni?
Well, as Anni said, that we have a lot of space in Finland, but for sure there's also kind of position for wind in Finland as well, and there's always someone has a summer cottage somewhere, but it typically just addresses a few persons and not that big crowd of people as in many other countries. But yes, I think that should be taken into account.
Okay, so is this NIMBYism or is it more serious than that, Anni? I mean, the opposition for someone maybe because they have the summer house or local residents. Is this preventing the growth of wind in Finland?
Well, I wouldn't like to call or use the word NIMBY. As such, because usually those people who are opposing a wind farm somewhere, they usually have, or the concerns and worries are real for them. So what we like to emphasize is that it really depends on the project developers and the municipalities they should have an open dialogue with the people to really take into account their worries, to answer to their worries. But of course, you can't just make everybody happy. Wind power is, as any other big project, that there's always somebody who is not happy with it, and that should be also accepted.
What's the main concern? Is it because of the natural world? Is it because of the way it looks, or is it a danger to birds, or is it the noise, or what are the main concerns?
Well, I think the most discussion that we've had in Finland has been about noise. The people are concerned about the noise. Then, of course, the big thing is, of course, that if your turbine, if the tip height of it is over 200 meters or to even 250 meters, as are the highest turbines under construction right now, you can't really hide it. And so it will change the scenery. And then we'll discuss about the birds, of course, and bats.
Yeah, absolutely. How about offshore wind? Is that a discussion at all in Finland?
There are several projects under development. The first offshore wind farm was constructed in 2017, so we have one offshore wind
already
farm.
there in place.
Yes,
Yeah, excellent.
But as onshore wind can be constructed without governmental subsidy right now, offshore wind is not yet there. It would need some financial push from the government, and that we are still lacking.
Okay.
But what was good to see was in the newly published governmental program that there were several sentences about offshore wind in it.
Okay, interesting, absolutely. Jenni, you mentioned PPAs earlier. Is this likely to boost wind even greater in Finland? We've seen a lot of growth or a lot of PPAs related to wind in Sweden and in Norway, and also other countries, from the UK to Spain to France. But how about Finland? What's the status here?
Well, we have seen the first PPAs to be signed, but I think the Finnish market is still developing from that perspective. That we have a lot of developers and kind of very very attractive PPAs would be available, to my understanding. But the off-taker market part is not yet so developed. So there are kind of few off-takers who are active, and the kind of for the Finnish energy users and for the energy utilities, this is something new, and they are many are still kind of considering how they should think about the PPAs. Is this something that they can go on with, or is it not for them? So I think it makes it a bit slower in Finland, but I assume that they will develop the market because of the very attractive prices we see. And if you think about what's your view on the electricity price for next 10 years, then I would assume that prices below 35 are quite reasonable.
Absolutely, quite attractive. But who are the companies that are interested in this? Because we've seen both a combination of sort of industrial firms, big aluminium producers, to also, the Googles, the Amazons. So who is sort of interested in the PPA market in Finland?
Well, I think publicly there's Google and IKEA as well in Finland, but very kind of specific Finnish thing is that we have this Mankala model where many of the large energy users are kind of their own capacity from nuclear plants through Mankala model, for example. Or
this is a very Finnish phenomenon, isn't it? Mankala, is it?
Yeah. So with this kind of model, they get a share of the electricity capacity in nuclear or some other CHP plants as well. And then they have the electricity price fixed for sourcing electricity.
Does that reduce the incentive then to get involved in PPAs or to sign long-term deals with renewables producers or developers?
Well, it could be, but on the other hand, they should be then more familiar with this kind of long-term contracts. But I think they still see PPAs as something a bit different than the Mankala model.
But one has to keep in mind that there are actually several Mankala companies also in wind power. So while we are talking about PPAs, it's really important. There's now some 13 projects under construction, and one of them in Finland. One of them is done with Mankala model, and all the rest with PPA. But still, there are Mankala companies, and we are waiting for them to maybe invest also in coming years.
Absolutely, yeah. The energy mix, very sort of nuclear dominated with CHP. Do you think the growth in renewables will reduce the need for sort of imports at peak times from Russia or from Sweden or from the Baltics?
Well, that remains to be seen because, maybe some 20% of our electricity production is still done with fossil fuels in Finland. So of course wind will first replace that as long as the electricity in our neighbours is cheaper than the electricity in Finland.
Of course, yeah.
So first we'll replace the more expensive fossil fuels and only after that the imports.
Jenni, we've seen a new government taking shape here in Finland. How will that impact the energy mix here?
Kind of first impressions of the government program was that they have a very ambitious targets, but they also rely on the markets, like saying for onshore wind that they see that no support is needed, and peat, which is also a specific fuel in Finland. Yeah. There wasn't anything kind of so clearly defined target for that, but that the markets will lead to decreasing use of peat as well. So I think the government seems to kind of quite a lot rely on markets. If I think about it from the electricity sector side, and I think this.
So the government is very market-based. It's looking at, or has market mechanisms as a part of its core policy issues, or tenets.
Yes, I think so. Although you wouldn't assume that this government is so much relying on the market market development, but I think from the electricity market perspective, it is quite a lot. There wasn't any kind of clear restrictions or on anything or introduction of any kind of support schemes or anything like that.
But you mentioned peat. I mean, peat, it's a very Finnish phenomenon in a way. It's used in CHP plants mostly.
Yes.
And do you expect that to slowly be phased out then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, because of the emissions trading scheme. So
Okay.
the higher CO2 price drives biomass.
Okay,
biomass
there's some
take-
conference going off now. I can hear it in the background, Jenni, but please don't let me disturb you. Yeah, absolutely. So basically, because of the price of emitting the CO2, it'll be phased out just in that way rather than direct policy intervention.
Yes. Of course, kind of on CHP side, then the fuel taxes also impact the competitiveness of different fuels. So I understand that the government is going to increase the fossil fuel taxes, and quite likely something will happen with peat taxation as well, which will of course also then increase the kind of impact of, or you have together the taxes and the CO2 cost which will drive the development to replace fossil fuels and peat with biomass.
Will it happen in the next few years, or by 2025 or 2030, do you think? I mean, when can Finland be fossil fuel free, if you like?
Well, I think it's already kind of happening. It depends on the location, on the investment needs in each location, how you can replace fossil fuels with biomass, and kind of there are the large cities which need to make larger investments to be able to get rid of fossil fuels. But in many locations, you can just increase the share of biomass and you use the CHP plants. Well, we have now the previous government made the decision to phase out coal by 2029, so that will...
That's still there. That's
Yes.
a core. Yeah. Do you see the new government as being very wind-friendly, Anni?
If I dare say, I would say that it's more wind-friendly than the last government that we had, the previous government that we had. The governmental program has got ambition on reducing CO2 emissions. The government is saying that we should be the first carbon neutral country, which is quite an ambitious target when you look at, for example, what Danes are doing and Swedes are doing. There are several sentences concerning wind that are rather good, like trying to, for example, find out how we could help out the offshore wind industry and what to do with planning and permitting to make it easier to develop
To speed up the growth.
Yeah. So yes, I would say that they are fairly positive.
Finland's very dominated by nuclear power as well. It's a very prominent part. Can nuclear and wind happily coexist in the energy mix? Are they a good combination, would you say, Anni?
Well, of course, both of them are such that with nuclear and with wind power, you need a lot of flexibility in the market for different reasons. The other one is a steady production, and the other one is then intermittent production. And both of them need flexibility, like demand response, interconnections to other countries to balance the situation. With these amounts of capacity that we have, nuclear, and that is coming online eventually.
We don't know when, but hopefully
Yeah,
next year. Maybe
yeah.
we'll come back to that.
Eventually. There can be a significant increase on wind power without the system suffering of it.
Okay.
But as said, we need flexibility.
So that could be a limit on the growth of wind power. Then you need something in the system to manage the flexibility, because you can't drive nuclear plants up and down in the same way to meet wind power production. Is that what you're saying, Anni?
Well, I'm not really saying that it's because of nuclear in general when you have intermittent production. You need flexibility in the system, like you do in Denmark, in Ireland, where you have a lot of wind. Absolutely. It's the same everywhere.
So that could come in demand side response, it could come in batteries, it could be all that. Yeah. All that's going to make. Jenni, do you have a view on this, on wind and nuclear coexisting in the Finnish energy mix?
Yes, of course, it's not a kind of perfect match, but I don't see this as being a major problem in the market. So we have good interconnections to the neighboring countries, and kind of there's so much hydro capacity in Norway, Sweden, that really kind of balances the market here as well. Quite easily, I would say, like compared to many other countries. And like when we do the market modeling for kind of with a lot of wind in the market, we see that the kind of the role of hydro from the Nordic market that balances the.
When there's a dry year, that could be more of a challenge, couldn't it? If the hydro reservoirs or stocks are low in Sweden and Norway, then that poses maybe more challenges for the Finnish system.
Well, that is true, but still, I think it's not going to be a huge problem here. And of course, we need also this other sources of flexibility, like demand side response. And I think it's developing very well. And actually, you don't need it so much to kind of balance this market. So I'm very optimistic that we get the flexibility to the system.
Are you equally optimistic that Olkiluoto 3 could come on next year, Jenni?
I'm not sure if I should comment on it.
Neither one of us has got a crystal ball.
No, of course. No, it's hard to say, but it's been, considering what's happening elsewhere. I think the EPR in China has just come online, but in France and Olkiluoto, the Flamanville in France and Olkiluoto 3, we're still waiting to see what happens here. But does Finland need new reactors, or can it cope with being interconnected to the Nordic market with increasing amounts of wind and maybe the flexibility that demand side and batteries could add to the system? Does it need these big centralized units?
Well, it depends on who would need it. Is it Finland as a country? But as I mentioned, this kind of Mankala model that we have a lot of energy users and energy utilities who seem to who are interested in developing new nuclear to Finland, and with that kind of model we can see it coming online. So it's there is this kind of big nationwide plan on what is best for Finland. But if the owners see it as an interesting investment opportunity, then why not?
And if they're willing to pay, I suppose that's the key element, exactly. Isn't it? Yeah. Absolutely. So Anni, do you think Finland can be CO2 neutral by 2035, or when was the initial plan 2029? Was it or?
No, I have to say that I can't remember now from the governmental program what was the year. They will phase out coal by 2029, but I can't remember what was it's carbon neutral. Was it 2035?
35, yes.
Yes, okay.
But of course then you take into account the carbon sinks as well, and that has a big impact on that. Yeah. So.
But yeah,
is that realistic?
I would say that we really have to. When you look at the climate change, we just can't neglect it.
So there's pressure coming from Greta Thunberg and lots of from the population at large that is forcing us to make this green transition maybe quicker than the politicians have seen or taken into account. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Anni and Jenni, for joining the Montel pod today.
Thanks to you for inviting us.
Thank you, Richard.
That's all from Helsinki. Please follow us, all the latest news on Montel News, and also on social media, Twitter and LinkedIn. Thank you. Goodbye.